Good morning, everybody. We have a tight schedule, so we need to get going. What's the door? So welcome to the 24th edition of ICIT, International Conference on Industrial Technology. This is one of our flagship conferences. My name is Milos and I am the general chair of the conference, also president-elect. My bills are paid by Virginia Commonwealth University, where I'm a professor and director of VCU Cybersecurity Center. I also have affiliation with my Idaho National Lab. As you may have noticed, I changed universities, but never labs. IEEE IES Society is one of the most internationally diverse society. Our society has members from all continents, many countries. It's one of the most diverse in IEEE and one of the oldest. Just a few years back, we were celebrating 70 years of Industrial Technology Society. At this conference, we managed to collect about 130 submissions, accepted over 100 papers, and ended up with a very unique program. I would dare to say that ICIT is one of the first in many ways. You will notice the main theme of cybersecurity. Here we are running a Capture the Flag competition, and it's run online internationally, all around the world. We have teams, and the winners will be announced tomorrow, I believe. Paolo, Victor, who else is running? Please wave. Yes. We have a number of interesting activities that include, but are not limited to, industry forum, panels, diversity and inclusion, students and young professionals. I'd like to try to recognize as many people as possible. It's going to be tough, but our honorary chairs are distinguished past presidents of the society, and distinguished eminent academics, Kohei, Leopoldo, Moyen, Brenluo, Makoto, Xing, and Dave Irvin. General chairs, besides me, Kamal Al-Haddad, a well-known figure in our society and around the world. Every conference has its tough times when you have to make tough decisions, and they're tied to finance, timing, and everything. And Kamal is the one that comes and brings thinking out of the box and get us out of the trouble. So thank you very much, Kamal. I'd like to recognize Luis, the lead of Technical Program Committee. Luis is from beautiful city of Lisboa in Portugal, and brings the centuries-old wisdom from Portugal. When we get into a tough spot, Luis just takes some time, thinks a little bit, and proposes a solution that we usually end up going with. So thank you very much, Luis. Other program chairs that contributed to this conference are Yang Shi, VP for Conferences, Huijin Gao, Sheldon Williamson, Makoto, Iwasaki, and Dustin De Silva. Thank you, Dustin. Dustin is also running Zoom business behind the scene. Treasurer Oleg Malinowski, as many others, have gotten delayed. He's at some airport and should be joining us later. Publicity chairs, Morgan Kiani, Leila Parsa, and Herb Hess. Tutorial chairs, Maria Valla, Antonio Luque, Tilo Sauter. Antonio is here. I saw him somewhere. Industry forum and panel, Stamatis. Stamati, I saw you somewhere here. Stamati is over there. Victor Huang, sitting here. Dietmar Bruckner, Okay, I saw him last night. He's joining us shortly. Industry exhibition, Michael Kondry, student rank young professionals, Marek Yashinsky. Marek is there. Michoko Nitsuma, Hani Vahedi, Sandun Mavikumbre, Victor Kobilian. Diversity of inclusion, this is one of the first also. This is our first conference where we are organizing diversity and inclusion workshop. Please put in your calendars and join the workshop on Thursday. So diversity and inclusion will be happening on Thursday. There's a packed program, very interesting speakers. Please join. Diversity and inclusion is led by Lucilla Lobello. Lucia has arrived, but probably enjoying breakfast. Mariam Sedfard, Morgan Chiani, Regina Ross, Aphrodite goes by Vanni Philippas. And we have International Advisory Board of Kiraki Hashimoto, Ramu Krishnan, OK Kainak, OK somewhere here. I saw him, Kin Long Han, Gerhard Hanke for Hong Kong, Sudeep Hamaz Zumder, Herb Hess, and Terry Martin. So we ended up with about 110 papers, 14 special sessions. Even for a conference, smaller conference of this size, you end up with about 500 people working as reviewers or taking the role of authors and so on. For this conference, we had easy 100+ volunteers, and this is one thing that our society is proud of. It is run by volunteers. Everything is done by volunteers. Volunteers create programs, volunteers create new initiatives, volunteers propose new projects, and so on. So what I'm really proud of is that we are running 2 panels with colleagues from national labs. The first one will be right after the keynote, and the second one will be on Thursday. So I'm really happy to see Idaho National Lab and Oak Ridge National Lab taking the lead in activities at this conference, and I hope we continue and just continue increasing that involvement. So thank you very much to both. Last but not least, ICIT, one of the first at ICIT is a workshop, strategic workshop. We call it Vision 2030. Many things have changed over the years, and we adapted, and now is a good time to get together and discuss path forward and plan our beautiful future together. So I'd like to recognize Finance Committee, where this idea workshop started. Michoko, Marshan, Kamal, Dietmar, and the officers. Can I ask officers to stand up? Here is Thilo Sauter, Vienna, Academy of Sciences, Stamatis, SAP, Germany / Greece, Antonio, Sevilla, VP Membership, Stoyan, VP Planning and Development. We have a couple more that will be joining us later. Now, I'd like to ask our president, Mariusz Malinowski, to just say a couple of words, and after that, we'll move on with the keynote. Thank you very much, Mariusz. Thank you very much, all.
Thank you very much. This is really a couple of words because many things was said by Milos. So the only one person which was not thanked, we have to thank Milos for organizing this conference. Please applause for Milos. Yes, thank you very much for invitation for this very beautiful place, Orlando. We can enjoy the nice weather. I think the whole year it's nice weather here. So I hope that taking into account these very good circumstances, this is a good time to have a fruitful conference. So I hope that for conference participants, this is a good occasion to have interesting discussions, maybe to start the collaboration between the universities, between the researchers. But parallelly, this is organized, this strategic workshop, which is, I think, very important for our society. Of course, I have some of the data which I can show you later on, starting this strategic workshop, showing that position of our society is strong. I think the financially strong, intakes on the journals, intakes of the membership, because we almost reached 10,000 in the end of 2022, taking account the technical activity as well as also another field of including the students, women engineering, and so on. But the question is, if without any honest discussion about the future, how we are thinking about our society being in 2030 or maybe in 2040, we are not able to keep our good position continuously. Therefore, I think that we need this discussion, especially to improve our operations in the short term and also to have some of the strategic goals for the 2030. So thank you very much for coming. I don't know, I know that it was not so easy to come, especially during the close to the Easter time. But I really believe that this workshop, this meeting, it's crucial for our society for the next years. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Now the time is to go ahead with our first keynote. I would like to invite Paul Titan to introduce our eminent speaker. Paul, thank you very much.
Thank you, Milos. And thank you everybody for being here today. My name is Paul Titus. I'm from the Idaho National Laboratory. It was very easy for us to come here. There is significant weather change. Right now, there is quite a bit of snow still in Idaho. It's melting, but here it was beautiful to see no snow. As many of you know, INL is a leading national laboratory in the areas of cybersecurity and 5G. Today, we have an excellent panel following the keynote speech discussing the transformational role of 5G in the fourth industrial revolution, also known as Industry 4.0. We also have a special session tomorrow with 7 papers from our research collaborators on this topic. INL appreciates its active research collaboration with VCU through Professor Milos Manic, and certainly looking forward to our continued collaboration with the academia to make secure use of 5G and future wireless technologies. It's my privilege now to introduce our keynote speaker, Ms. Valerie M. Cofield. She serves as the Chief Strategy Officer of the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, CISA. Ms. Cofield serves as the Principal Policy and Strategic Advisor to CISA leadership and senior management, integrating strategy across all the nation's organization's mission areas and ensuring policy, strategy, and operational consistency throughout the agency. Prior to CISA, Ms. Cofield served at the Federal Bureau of Investigations for 22 years in a variety of roles. She was the Deputy Assistant Director for the Cybersecurities branch within FBI Cyber Division, where she led coordination and deployment of the division's technical tools and capabilities and oversaw cyber-related training, recruiting, and hiring and budgeting for the division. She also served in a senior executive role as the Chief Staff of the Science and Technology branch, as the Deputy Assistant Director of the Digital Transformation Office, where she engaged with interagency partners. With that said, I now turn the time over to Ms. Cofield. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And thank you so much for inviting me to speak here today at the 24th IEEE International Conference on Industrial Security. And I really thank you for that kind introduction, Paul. I'm jealous. I'm hoping you're enjoying the great time of year in Florida. I really wish I could be there in person with you. Nevertheless, I'm excited to be addressing all of you today about the importance of 5G security and resilience. And as Paul mentioned, my name is Val Cofield, and I work for the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, known as CISA, and I'm the Chief Strategy Officer there. And in my work as a Principal Policy and Strategic Advisor to CISA leadership and management, I'm charged with integrating strategy across all of the organization's mission areas and ensuring that the policy and strategy and that there's operational consistency throughout the entire agency. Since I work in policy and strategy at a national level, you can see why 5G's powerful capabilities and inherent risks are extremely important to me and my job. 5G, or the fifth generation mobile network, represents a complete transformation of telecommunications networks, introducing a wealth of benefits that will pave the way for new capabilities and support connectivity for applications like smart cities, autonomous vehicles, and telemedicine. Roughly every 10 years, the next generation of mobile communication network is released, bringing faster speeds and increased capabilities. The first generation, or 1G, of wireless networks brought the very first cell phones. 2G brought improved coverage and texting. 3G introduced voice with data and internet. And 4G long-term evolution delivered increased speeds to keep up with mobile data demand. And then there is 5G. We know that 5G will transform the digital landscape and serve as a catalyst for innovation, new markets, and economic growth. As tens of billions of devices are connected to the internet through 5G, these connections will empower a vast array of new and enhanced critical infrastructure services. 5G builds upon existing telecommunication infrastructure by improving the bandwidth, capacity, and reliability of wireless broadband services. The goal is to meet increasing data and communications requirements, including the capacity for tens of billions of connected devices that will make up the Internet of Things, ultra-low latency required for critical near real-time communication, and faster speeds to support emerging technologies. Now, I know that I don't really need to explain the capabilities and history of 5G to this group, so let me just give you an overview of how CISA is involved in the risk management of 5G. As new technologies both directly and indirectly connect to 5G emerge, CISA assesses that 5G will present opportunities and challenges as its implementation will introduce vulnerabilities related to supply chain, deployment, network security, and the loss of competition and trusted options. 5G's emphasis on software-defined networking and the aggregation of the network could potentially make these networks more vulnerable to security threats, particularly those originating from a supply chain compromise. At CISA, we look at 5G as a process of risk management. In other words, we want to identify, analyze, assess, and communicate the risks by accepting, avoiding, transferring, or controlling it to an acceptable level considering associated costs and benefits of any actions taken. Effective risk management improves the quality of decision-making. While risk often cannot be totally eliminated, actions can usually be taken to control risk. As you all may know or may not know, CISA is a very new agency. It was formally established in 2018 as America's Cyber Defense Agency under the DHS umbrella. We were established to serve as the national coordinator for critical infrastructure, security, and resilience. And we lead efforts to understand, manage, and reduce both cyber and physical risks. And we do this by maintaining public-private partnerships that are dedicated to sharing risk information, working with and through our regional experts who are responsible for on-site vulnerability assessments, and partnering with owners and operators to mitigate risk. And we participate in national and international level dialogues to learn more about threats and share lessons learned. CISA also works with government and industry to identify, analyze, prioritize, and manage the most significant strategic risks to the nation's critical infrastructure. Since the nation's critical infrastructure is largely owned and operated by the private sector, managing risks is a shared priority. CISA creates an environment where the private sector, government agencies, and key stakeholders can collaborate, share expertise, and coordinate risk reduction activities to ensure critical infrastructure is secure and resilient now and into the future. In today's digitizing world, as organizations are increasingly integrating cyber systems into their operations, they are also facing more diverse and sophisticated threats. Cyber, physical, technological, or natural, they may have cross-sector impacts. The evolving risk landscape necessitates an evolved response. Because we lead the national effort to understand and manage risk, the rollout of 5G has been a focus area of ours. Why? Because the use of 5G components manufactured by untrusted companies could expose U.S. entities to risks introduced by malicious software and hardware, counterfeit components, and component flaws caused by poor manufacturing processes and maintenance procedures. 5G hardware, software, and services provided by untrusted entities can increase the risk of compromise to the confidentiality, integrity, and availability of network assets. Even if U.S. networks are secure, U.S. data that travels overseas through untrusted telecommunications networks is potentially at risk of interception, manipulation, disruption, and destruction. The effectiveness of 5G security enhancements will in part depend on proper implementation and configuration. Despite security enhancements over previous generations, it is unknown what new vulnerabilities may be discovered in 5G networks. Further, 5G builds upon previous generations of wireless networks and will initially be integrated into 4G long-term evolution networks that contain some legacy vulnerabilities. Untrusted companies may be less likely to participate in interoperability efforts. Custom 5G technologies that do not meet interoperability standards may be difficult to update, repair, and replace. This potentially increases the lifecycle cost of the product and delays 5G deployment if the equipment requires replacement. The U.S. has placed an increased emphasis on ensuring the security and integrity of 5G. For example, security officials from over 30 countries, including the U.S., met in Prague in May of 2019 to discuss guidelines for securing the 5G network deployment. The results of the engagement was the deployment of the Prague proposals, which identified recommendations in 4 distinct categories in preparation of 5G rollout. The first category was in policy, the second in technology, the third in economy, and last in security, privacy, and resilience. Building upon the recommendations established by the Prague proposals, the U.S. developed the National Strategy to Secure 5G, a strategic document that supports the goals of the recently released National Cybersecurity Strategy and expands on how the U.S. government will secure 5G infrastructure domestically and abroad. And what's CISA doing about it? Well, CISA specifically, we are leading the 5G risk management efforts and helping shape the rollout of this emerging critical infrastructure so that the U.S. can fully benefit from all the advantages 5G connectivity promises to bring. In doing so, we are dedicated to working with our interagency, industry, and international partners to manage the accompanying risks and challenges to 5G implementation appropriately, increasing its security and resilience at the design phase and reducing national security risk from an untrustworthy 5G network. Through this approach, we aim to ensure that there are policy, legal, security, and safety frameworks in place to fully leverage 5G technology while managing its significant risks. Our approach is also guided by a series of strategic initiatives, including supporting 5G policy and standards developments by emphasizing security and resilience. To prevent attempts by threat actors to influence the design and architecture of 5G networks, it is critical that 5G policies and standards serve as the foundation for safe and secure 5G implementation. CISA is actively engaging with partners in the promotion and development of security best practices, standards, and federal policies that remove untrustworthy 5G components from US networks. Expanding situational awareness of 5G supply chain risks, and we're also promoting security measures. Between untrusted components, vendors, equipments, and networks, 5G supply chain security is under constant threat. CISA is collaborating with interagency, industry, and international partners to evaluate, prioritize, and communicate 5G supply chain risks to 5G infrastructure. We're partnering with stakeholders to strengthen and secure existing infrastructure to support future 5G deployments. First iterations of 5G deployments are working alongside existing 4G long-term evolution infrastructure and core networks. This has the potential for malicious attacks to exploit known vulnerabilities. CISA is working with industry and government to develop and communicate security enhancements to support secure 5G deployments, where possible, leveraging research and development capabilities that address 5G security and vulnerability challenges. We're encouraging innovation in the 5G marketplace to foster trusted 5G vendors. To foster a market of trusted 5G vendors, CISA is working with its partners to communicate risk, promote best practices, and establish methods for evaluating the security of 5G vendors. By communicating risk and vulnerabilities to 5G components and technologies, CISA will shape the 5G technological ecosystem, maintaining the US's position as a global leader in 5G deployment and creating a market environment that prioritizes security and resilience. And last but not least, we are analyzing potential 5G use case and sharing information on identified risk management strategies. To ensure the security and integrity of 5G, CISA will communicate known vulnerabilities and risk management strategies for use cases associated with securing the nation's critical functions, specifically the use of Internet of Things deliverables outlined in the botnet report and the Council to Secure the Digital Economy IoT baseline. At CISA, we have 3 principles to support these strategic initiatives, and these principles are focusing on 3 core competencies. First, risk management, promoting secure and resilient 5G deployment by leading efforts to identify, analyze, prioritize, and manage risk. Second, stakeholder engagement, actively engaging federal, state, local, tribal, and territorial industry associations, academia, nonprofit, and international partners to address 5G challenges. And we also are providing, lastly, technical assistance, updating and developing instructional tools and services to support stakeholders with the planning, governance, operational, and technical aspects of secure 5G deployments. I want to take a little bit of time to talk about CISA's national critical functions. 5G will also support a host of our national critical functions, including autonomous vehicles, smart electric grids, intelligent medicine, and military communications. In other words, 5G will support functions of the government and private sector, out of many, that we deem so vital that their disruption, corruption, or dysfunction would have a debilitating effect on security, national economic security, national public health or safety, or any combination thereof. In April of 2019, we published the initial set of national critical functions, which has since been completed by definition, and since we have completed definitions for each of the functions. Obviously, our national critical functions are increasingly relying on 5G components, which is why securing these components and emerging technology is of utmost importance. If you aren't familiar with our national critical functions or NCF efforts, it was an initiative undertaken by our agency in collaboration with government and industry partners associated with all of the 16 critical infrastructure sectors, state, local, and tribal partners, and other stakeholders. The set of NCFs are organized into 4 areas: connect, distribute, manage, and supply, which identify the connections by technologies that enable critical communications and capabilities to send and receive data, like internet connectivity, like 5G. Distribution methods that allow the movement of goods, people, and utilities inside and outside the United States. For example, electrical distribution or cargo transportation. Management processes that ensure our national security and public health and safety, like the management of hazardous materials or national emergencies, and the supply of materials, goods, and services that secure our economy, for example, clean water, housing, and research and development. The NCFs allow for a more robust prioritization of critical infrastructure and a more systematic approach to corresponding risk management activity. They represent an evolution to the critical infrastructure risk management framework established in the National Infrastructure Protection Plan. While the previous approach focused almost entirely on entity-level risk management as opposed to critical outcomes, the NCF approach enables a richer understanding of how entities come together to produce critical functions and what assets, systems, networks, and technologies underpin those functions. By viewing risk through a functional lens, we can ultimately add resilience and harden systems across the critical infrastructure ecosystem in a more targeted, prioritized, and strategic manner. This allows for more holistically capturing cross-cutting risks and associated dependencies that may have cascading impacts within and across sectors. I also want to talk about the supply chain a little bit. As I highlighted that we examined 5G and other emerging technologies impacting our national critical functions, we realize that there is a lot of risk out there, and to effectively manage these risks, we need to prioritize our approach. In these efforts, CISA has redoubled its focus on working with the private sector, developers, and international partners to prioritize national security in their decision-making process, while also initiating partnerships and programs to foster innovation. We want to quit being reactive to products that pose real and potential threats and become more proactive by stopping those potentially harmful, overtly vulnerable products from being developed in the first place. My agency is especially concerned about the cyber and data risks from information and communications technology products designed, developed, manufactured, or supplied by companies operating under the control or influence of a foreign government whose national security interests are averse to the United States. We all know that there is a certain level of risk with any technology that generates or collects sensitive data, such as industrial control systems. But that risk increases dramatically when the technology comes from a company that could be persuaded or forced to abuse their access on behalf of a foreign government that does not share our constitutional norms and values, or operates without any meaningful checks on its abilities to compel cooperation with its intelligence services. The United States government has serious concerns about technologies that take American data into the territory of a government that allows or directs its intelligence services to open the hood and peek around and do whatever they want with that data. Those concerns and that pragmatic worldview are what led us to develop the framework that I want to share with you today. We are looking at supply chain risk management in the context of procurement or acquisition for our nation's supply chain. We are looking at three interconnecting pieces, and that's the what, the where, and the who. First, the what. For this, we are looking at the technical aspects of a product or service. In doing so, we are examining a variety of concerns. For example, we want to identify what functions the product or services perform and how it operates, whether the product receives software updates from the supplier, and whether there are technical mitigations that could be instituted to detect malicious use of the product, just to name a few. Second, the where. This is the legal piece. When examining the legal piece of a technology or product, it's important to ask several questions about the country of origin. For example, what extent do the foreign government's laws or policies permit it to compel cooperation with its intelligence activities? Is there meaningful independent judicial review? And more broadly, What are the foreign government's national security interests as they relate to your country? And third, the who. For this, we are looking at the relationship a company may have with a foreign government. It is imperative that we examine whether a foreign government, whether directly or indirectly, holds a financial stake in the company. It is also important to look at the extent to which a company may be influenced or susceptible to coercion. We all know the saying, the cybersecurity chain is only as strong as its weakest link. I believe this framework will help us ensure that our country's supply chain excludes that weak link. And I welcome you to think about these three questions as you consider your organization's supply chain and the integration of 5G into your networks. I want to shift a little bit and touch on the importance of workforce. A long-term and one of the most relevant goals for CISA is to secure a more resilient future for the American people and accelerate our technological capabilities by growing our national cybersecurity workforce. Bottom line, as technologies are advancing, like it has been in the realm of 5G, we need our education and workforce to keep up with these advances. It's happening fast, which is why this is one of CISA's top priorities. This is why we are working with the academic sector to promote cyber education for K through 12 and higher education students. We are also growing the pipeline for future talents. We want to ensure that we have a workforce with a diverse way of thinking about our unique cyber challenges, like keeping 5G secure into the future. And there are still approximately 700 open cybersecurity positions currently in the US. There are so many ways to grow the cybersecurity workforce, and CISA has joined forces with entities like cyber.org and the Girl Scouts of the USA to get students thinking about careers in cybersecurity earlier, just like if they wanted to be a doctor, a teacher, or a lawyer. I know our time together here is short, so before I conclude, I want to take a step back and provide a quick recap on where we are in terms of the 5G rollout and where we might be headed in the future. Just imagine in the next 10 years, will we learn the lessons of underinvestment in 5G telecommunications technology and ultimately dominate the 6G market? Or will we cede to a reality in which authoritarian regime-linked firms become the center of gravity for innovating connectivity, patenting their technologies, and progressively setting the telecom agenda of the future? We will only succeed in fully securing 5G if we invest aggressively in our talent and in our education system, if we invest in our alliances globally for peace and freedom across governments, as well as with the private sector, and only if we stay true to the values that bind us together for collective security and prosperity. These are not insurmountable challenges, but they are by no means assured. I would submit that technological innovation of the future is no longer a guarantee of peace and prosperity, but it's at its core. To secure the independence of our nations, the partnership and mutual respect we have for one another, and continued global cooperation, secure technological development is a no-fail mission in and of itself. Ultimately, our goal at CISA is to strengthen the global critical infrastructure community so that we are faster and smarter than our adversaries. We want to make sure that by continuing to deepen collaboration across industry and the international community, we will raise the cost, time, and complexity thresholds for successful attacks to the point that they exceed the capabilities of even the most advanced threat actors. This must be a priority with securing our most critical functions, including, of course, the 5G networks. Lastly, I want to mention that 2022 was a banner year for 5G. It was when most carriers switched over to the 5G network. However, even now in 2023, 5G has faced some deployment challenges, which is why the rollout continues in many aspects all over the world. Thank you again for inviting me to be a part of such a wonderful conference, and I'm happy to take any questions you might have now.
Ms. Cofield, Valerie, thank you so much for your comments. I'd like to, anybody out in the audience have any questions? Arup?
Thank you again so much, CSO Cofield. I think you gave us such a nice summary, very clear picture of what your agency is focusing on. And I think I just want to check your thoughts on one particular aspect of global collaboration. And I think as you know, the 5G, you're already doing it. You mentioned the PROG meeting, and you mentioned that in addition to securing this critical infrastructure in the US, also important to secure the overall architecture globally, because everything is global right now. Do you have any particular thoughts? I'm looking at this conference. It's an international academic conference mostly, and I do think that continuing the collaboration on the security aspects of 5G with our partner countries and with the academia would be really very strong input to your process, right? Any particular thoughts on that?
No, I think that the academic community plays a very important role, and organizations like IEEE also obviously play a tremendously important role, because we believe that the standards that should control and organize the organizing principles around these networks need to be through these international communities, these collaborative communities, and not necessarily dictated by a single country's perspective. We feel like, with that international collaboration and the transparency that exists in those types of standards, that the standards that are developed and produced through those type of organizations are stronger and more secure. And so, we want to continue to collaborate. I know CISA, as well as many of my interagency partners across the U.S. government, oftentimes collaborate and will continue to collaborate, both with academia and with our international partners, since, as you mentioned, this is such an international and global issue, and that we also are working on trying to secure more capability building across the nations, working with like-minded countries to be able to provide alternatives, especially for the developing countries where they might not be able to afford different options.
Well, thank you very much indeed for your great presentation. By the way, I'm not a communication guy, neither am I a security guy, but I have some comments on what you have presented very nicely. One is, I was a bit surprised that you had 700 jobs still open. That seemed too little to me, right? Maybe you mean right at the very top level, right? Because I think every company needs a security guy, So really, we need to educate them, we professors. The second thing is just an experience. We have to educate the public too. It is just an experience, maybe a bit could be relaxing if I tell you, but it is. I took a taxi from the airport to the hotel, and the taxi driver, I tried to push in my card through the credit card, thing, and she said, it doesn't work. And I said, what should I do? So he gave me an iPhone with it, everything, and he wanted to push it through. And we had a great argument there that I said, this is not secure. I don't know what there is in that iPhone, right? But in the end, I had to pay through that iPhone. Thank you very much.
Are there any other questions? Yes, sir.
So again, yes, I'm Wes Withrow. Again, appreciate your time today, and thank you for your presentation. One of the things that, like in the world that we're living in right now, and talking about zero trust and zero trust architecture, right? And know that CISA is just getting ready to release kind of the new version 2.0 of the zero trust maturity model as well too. But in your time working with our international coalition of partners, have you seen, you know, the discussions or had discussions with internationally about the adoption of the principles of zero trust, knowing that it's still very early in this country, right? You know, we're kind of on our own 5-yard line getting started with it. But again, have you seen and had discussions internationally about zero trust?
Oh, no, I think that there is, you know, interest in zero trust. I mean, most of our collaboration internationally starts with a lot of our, you know, our close allies, like our Five Eyes partners. And I do think that there is interest there in moving out. And a lot of times, you know, the US is a leader in security standards. And so as we move out, I think that there's very likelihood that other of our close allied partners will start to do the same as well. So I do think there's interest in moving in that direction.
Thank you.
Thank you for a great presentation. My name is Regina Roos and I'm coming from Germany. So I always like to hear what the other part of the world is thinking in respect of this topic of cybersecurity. However, I feel we have a big homework which is related to education. And I'm wondering when globally the school systems in primary school and kindergarten will start to put cybersecurity on the agenda, because only then we can start bringing the right mindset forward. What are the plans in your organization to support it as a social project?
No, thank you for that question. I totally agree that we need to, and we are trying, as I mentioned in my earlier speech, to focus in on education at all levels. So I agree with you that we need to start early. And so we have been working with organizations like code.org here in the US to help with K through 12 curriculum. But we're also working with universities, you know, and helping to improve and increase cybersecurity education at the university level as well. And you know, for us, I know if we start at home, a lot of times the US, once they start something, can be a leader and, you know, promulgate that information and best practices to our international colleagues. But I agree with you that it's an important issue. And, you know, we are starting, you know, and I know too, I should note that the US recently released its national cybersecurity strategy. But there's going to be a companion strategy that focuses in on the national cybersecurity workforce. So I would look for that strategic document. I don't know exactly when it will be released publicly, but the plan is to release it publicly. And I think there'll be ideas in there in that strategic document of how we can improve K through 12 education.
Yeah, thank you very much for the very nice presentation with clear and strong messages. I'm working for ABB, that is a large automation company for industries. I do have a lot to work on the 5G for industrial automation. I fully agree with you about your concern about security and resilience of the 5G infrastructure. My question is, do you think the major vendors of the 5G technology has taken the proper actions to address this concern? For example, in their standard, in their product, in the fundamental technologies?
I mean, I think we've taken positive strides, but I think there's always room for improvement. You know, one of our big initiatives this year with our director, Director Easterly, is to encourage not just in the 5G space, but in general, really encouraging product designers to think about security and building that in as they are developing the product and not as an after action bolt-on. And we're really trying to also drive the best practice of having security as something that you don't have to opt into, but it's security by default. So, you know, really these principles of building products securely at the onset and as well as driving this security principle of having secure by default. And so these are things that I know our organization is trying to promulgate throughout our meetings with industry and also with our international colleagues as well.
Sorry, one more question. Do you see any like single point authority that is coordinating these actions? For example, is a 3GPP or NIST in US is driving such activities?
I don't think that there's a single point within the US that's driving the activity, but I would say that, NIST is definitely a partner of ours. I think CISA is also working. I think the newly created Office of the National Cyber Director is probably going to become a focal point of activities like that. But it's in a nascent state, right? It's just been established, but I do think that in the future they could be one of those focal points.
Thank you.
Ms. Cofield, this is Milos. I am with Virginia Commonwealth University and a general chair of this conference. I wanted first to thank you. I know how difficult it is to speak via Zoom when you cannot exactly see the audience, you cannot see the faces, you cannot see reactions. So as a teacher via Zoom, I can totally relate with the challenges of presenting this way. So thank you very much for your time today. I wanted to mention that in Virginia, our governor was stating that there's about 36,000 available positions in cyber, and out of those, maybe 17,000 in cybersecurity. And many companies like Amazon moved to Northern Virginia and so on. So the demand is definitely there. I just wanted to ask you maybe if you can chime in on a role of AI and machine learning in cyber and 5G. How do you see the future when it comes to AI? Is AI taking over? Are we in control of AI? Do we have some kind of shared autonomy agreement with AI? What's going to happen in the future? Your take. Thank you very much.
No, thanks for that question. AI is obviously a hot topic, and I don't think we know all the answers, but AI, like most technology that's developed, right? It in itself is benign. It's neither good or bad, and AI itself brings obviously lots of promise, but obviously there's also peril involved. And so I know that we are trying to thoughtfully work through as a country on how we should be thinking about AI and what governance processes need to be in place. As I mentioned, with the release of the National Cybersecurity Strategy, there are also these supplemental strategies that are being released. And one strategy that the US government is working on is a strategy in regards to AI. It's obviously clearly a transformational technology, and it's already in so much of what we do right now. And I think as it becomes, as we develop and grow its uses, we do need to think about what are the proper governance structures that need to be in place. And so I don't have the answers to what that structure is yet, but I know that we are working through together as a US government and together with our industry and academic partners to think through this issue.
Valerie, thank you so much. I think, were there any other questions? Yes, sir.
Hi, thank you again for the presentation. It was very informative. Something you mentioned is kind of sticking with me though, in terms of the manufacture of 5G components from places that might not be so aligned with US operations. And in the past, there have been, I don't want to name names, but there have been some, I guess, embargoes on certain types of products, like cellular products on the market. Do you foresee that there might be more of that coming with the scope of 5G and, it's touching everything now, smart cities, telemedicine, the stuff that you mentioned in your presentation? And do you think that this will affect US operations outside of the US?
I will say that there is a real interest in understanding. I think, COVID sort of opened up a lot of our understanding or or opened our eyes to a lot of the risks that exist with our supply chain. On top of, I think even before COVID, we were definitely talking about what risks exist in the 5G supply chain network. I do think that since recently the CHIPS Act has been passed, there's definitely a push in the US government to bring onshore more of our capabilities and technical components. I don't see in the near term how that would be possible entirely, but there is definitely a movement to try to do that and build some indigenous onshore capabilities here. But again, I think it's also working with our international our international partners in how we work together on ensuring that we have a secure and resilient supply chain where we feel like all the components and pieces and software involved in whatever the product is something that we feel like we can rely on.
Valerie, it looks like that's all the questions for now. Thank you so much for your time today, and you have a great rest of your day.
Thank you. And thanks so much for inviting me to speak. I hope you have a good rest of the conference. Thank you.